Yes, we have breaking news in the R. Kelly case. When will there be a verdict? Well, the verdicts have started to come in, and we know that R. Kelly has been found guilty, okay? And at least one of the counts, and the most important one, really, the racketeering and sex trafficking case. R. Kelly has been found guilty of that charge. He also faces other federal charges, other verdicts that should be coming in. He faces state charges in Chicago, Illinois. While we wait for the confirmation of the other verdicts, let me go to my guest, Dina Dahl, Law and Crime legal analyst. Are you surprised?
No. You know, following this case, the evidence was overwhelming. I mean, the number of accusers, both the ones he was charged with and the prior Backed Act ones, had such consistent stories over and over and over. I'm not surprised that the jury was persuaded by it.
And Joe Richardson, people were expressing a little bit of questionable comments about why would there be a racketeering charge in a sex case. But this was perfectly appropriate. Many years, many victims over state lines. He was bringing what would be called children under the law for the purposes of engaging in sex. Your thoughts?
Well, clearly that opens up the floodgates, as it were, to information that can come in this case. They didn't want to get it wrong like they did 13 years ago, the other authorities, in bringing that other case against him. One woman, she doesn't testify, you've got no case, it's over with. Racketeering, basically there's a criminal enterprise, saying that the people around him not only helped him with his music, but they helped him bring in these girls, boys, etc., and that all of it goes together. And so it goes 20 years or so of information about issues that keep occurring with these women, with these issues, often girls, underage, etc. So it all came in together. And so, you know, once all of that was to come in, that was going to just be really, really hard for him to overcome.
And Dina Dahl, Joe mentioned the 20-year sentencing in the racketeering count, but let me just talk to you about other things the jury had to consider in that count. And let me read them to you. 14 individual acts, 14 the jury had to consider. Remember, they just went out on Friday, okay? Additional questions in those considerations: bribery, kidnapping, forced labor, violations of the Mann Act. There are also 8 counts or 8 alleged violations of the Mann Act. That's bringing young people under the age of, it used to be in 1906 when they started at 21, but now it's 18, across state lines, transportation, coercion of women, 2 women both, including a minor. Each count carries 10 years imprisonment. Tell me, what are your thoughts about what the jury did on those before we know that confirmation?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is like, the fact that they deliberated in such a short amount, even though there were so many counts and so many charges, speaks to how well the prosecution did to present the overwhelming evidence. They had to prove each and every one of these counts in such a simplified way. And also how they, you know, I thought that their questioning of the witnesses was very clear. And then that speaks to the fact that they took such a short time to deliberate what would otherwise you would think would be a complicated, jury instructions for the jury to have gone through. But that, this is how you know the prosecution did a good case, a complicated case and a short deliberation.
Yeah, maybe in a mafia racketeering case, the jury could be confused. But Joe Richardson, victims. Let's talk about the victims here in this case. If we didn't have these brave victims coming forward, many of them testified under assumed names. Some were identified in the media. We're not going to make those identifications right now. But if we didn't have that kind of strength and that kind of support, could this case ever have been brought?
It would have been much harder, okay? And we are in a little bit of a different time with the Me Too and some of these other things. But that being said, this is still very difficult. It's particularly against a superstar. There were still people standing outside the courtroom saying, "Free R. Kelly," and he didn't do it, and he couldn't have done it, and all of these other things. So this is always a difficult situation, and it's still the case that often women, particularly in a situation like this, would be the ones put on trial, and so therefore the evidence really did have to be compelling, and perhaps there was a little bit more safety in numbers, but that R. Kelly documentary probably set the tone for this, and and reopened the possibilities here, and kept this on people's minds, and gave this thing an opportunity to happen. But it took a whole lot of bravery by a whole lot of women who are maybe then girls, whose lives are affected and maybe changed forever. So you do give them credit for having that bravery, but you also give the jury credit for doing what it needed to do, and not being so starstruck that it couldn't go through the evidence and do what it needed to do.
Dina Dahl, talking about bravery and talking about how some of these young women were like given over to R. Kelly. You know, he could make them famous. The mothers and the families sometimes said, no problem, just go with him. Okay, this is a problem we have in society here, dealing with superstars, and whether it be young women, young men, that could be preyed upon, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of an element with all of these cases, even with Harvey Weinstein, even though there weren't children involved, there was this trust of him because he was a powerful man, because he was a celebrity. And so I think these cases show that, you know, most powerful, famous people aren't going to commit criminal acts, but it's so much easier for them to do it because there is this benefit of a doubt that they're given, you know, that by the victim and also by the family. And it's tragic here when it does involve children, and it's, you know, the adults who are kind of in charge of caring for them are also giving the benefit of the doubt to the perpetrator. But you know, this does happen in our society.
Yeah, let me, Dina and Joe and our viewers. R. Kelly has been found guilty of all charges. This is an update. R. Kelly has been found guilty of all charges that he was on trial in federal court in Brooklyn, right over the bridge here from where I am sitting. That jury listened to all the evidence, and after deliberating Friday and some part of today, they found them guilty of all charges. That includes the sex racketeering case. Racketeering and sex trafficking case is actually the title for it. The violations of the Mann Act, kidnapping, bribery, which are subparts of the racketeering charge. Every single charge the prosecution brought finally in the year 2021 to trial. Joe Richardson, why did any of the states bring any of these charges prior to that?
I think it's just really hard to bring a charge against a superstar. It seemed to be that case 13 years ago where the evidence was clear. I mean, I knew he married Aaliyah and she was underage at the time. I don't know why other people didn't know. So, you know, I mean, you could even just listen to his songs and the things that he talks about. There's this starstruck quality that happens. But that being said, being thoughtful about bringing a case also means to make sure you have the evidence lined up and that the people can and will come forward. This is everything is witness driven, but this particularly is witness driven, right? There won't be forensic evidence and some of those types of things, but the witnesses have to come forward and not just one or two. And so I think, again, the documentary probably really helped the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, see that this was a possibility, that not only were stories consistent, but they would actually be brought. This is so witness driven, and that had to happen.
Yeah, and Dina, so he married Aaliyah when she was 15 years old, supposedly to keep her quiet because he believed she couldn't testify against him. As you know, she died in a plane crash when she was 21 back in 2015. The defense attorney compared his client, R. Kelly, who's now been found guilty of all charges, to Martin Luther King. Major mistake? Did it offend the jury? Did it offend you? Did it offend me? Tell us, did that have anything to do, you think, with the quickness and swiftness of these deliberations?
You know, it may very well have been, because this sends a message. You know, the jury, by doing it so short, you know, really showed how convincing they thought the evidence was. I did think that was offensive. I don't know why he did that. You know, I thought his comparison actually to Hugh Hefner was a good one. You know, that this idea that you don't convict somebody based on their lifestyle, only if they commit crimes. But to compare him to somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. is just, I don't know why he did that, but I do think that probably really backfired.
Yeah, Joe, I found that, quite frankly, disgusting. And as a defense attorney, if I had a client on trial for disgusting acts, and some of us were like gagging when we were listening to the replay just in the media, I want to know what your take is on this when you take a major icon like Martin Luther King. I have a dream. It's a dream of equality. That's the dream. And then R. Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be really concerned about insulting the jury's intelligence. And so a jury has a job. And in this particular case, you've got two things going. You've got a lot of people on the jury who wouldn't necessarily have the same lifestyles as R. Kelly, but they're still sworn to be objective and evaluate the evidence. And so in this case, you can just hope, if you're the defense, that they will not convict him or hang the jury, despite the fact that they don't share the same lifestyle. Instead, they had a situation where he was convicted because of what he'd actually done. And to detract from it by saying he's like Martin Luther King is an affront to what most of us believe. It's there's an argument that there's a sexist element as well. If there was a woman that was considered to have done heinous things, society would not be comparing her to some hero or whatever. So it was a problem on a lot of levels, but the evidence was the worst problem, right? I mean, they had to defend the case the way they needed to. And to say, well, he's like Martin Luther King, not only doesn't detract from the overwhelming mountain of evidence that there was, but also shows that they're just not in a real world.
Yes, thank you both Nina and Joe for those comments. Repeat, R. Kelly, singer R. Kelly, has been found guilty of all counts in federal court here in Brooklyn. The jury deliberated 10 hours, and to those sheroes and those heroes who testified, obviously the verdict is long awaited for their due. We'll be back at the Law&Crime Network, and when we come back, we'll be talking about another victim, Sasha Krause, 27, Mennonite, allegedly killed by Mark Gooch. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.